Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 43 of SportsBeak, second one of the week. First time we've done that since the summer. I'm Eddie Kalegi. Tim Moore not with us today. He'll be back next week. A couple topics to talk about in the realms of the NBA, NFL, and MLB today, and then we'll be joined by a few different drivers from the Online Motorsports Association ahead of tonight's Daytona 250. Should be a good one. Can't wait to watch it. It'll be live on Twitch at 8 o'clock. But before that, let's talk about a couple of important topics. We'll begin with the Brooklyn Nets, who, of course, Wednesday was the debut of what the fans are calling scary hours, with Kyrie Irving, James Harden, and Kevin Durant all on the court at the same time. Now, I think down the line this is going to work out. But at this point, there's clearly some glaring issues. And there's three main issues, I think, with the Brooklyn Nets. And surprisingly, I thought one of the issues at the beginning of the season was going to be the coaching with Steve Nash. He's doing a pretty good job for being a new coach. But they have three other big issues. The first one is just they're not playing in sync. Kyrie Irving and James Harden on the court at the same time, you knew there was going to be some problems with that because they both want to be handling the ball. This is the first ever Big Three, where all three players are true cornerstones and franchise players. Thinking about the Golden State Warriors, because some people have tried to compare this group to the Splash Brothers and Durant, Klay Thompson was not someone who was going to hold the ball at the end of the game and try to take the game-winning three. He was someone you could go to for reliable scoring. Kyrie Irving, James Harden, and Kevin Durant all have that clutch mentality, not necessarily that clutch gene where they're definitely going to make the shot, but all three of them certainly want to attempt it. And every game so far this season for the Nets, when it's come down to the wire, there's a lot of debate as to who should take that final shot. And unfortunately, in all these close games, it really hasn't worked out for them. They've been so close so many times this season, and it's been a couple brutal losses. That's the first issue. Second issue, no size. We knew that all along when they traded Jared Allen away. Still, like I said last week, I'm not completely opposed to that trade, but that's the situation you have to address. They did sign, I believe it was Norvez Peel, now as a extra forward, which you just need. Nick Claxton, when he comes back, he's going to be very important to this team. But you cannot be having Kevin Durant out there at center. It was embarrassing in overtime and second overtime that for some reason, no DeAndre Jordan in the game. They have Kevin Durant trying to take the opening tip-off against Jared Allen. And while we know how talented Durant is, he's 6 inches shorter than Jared Allen, and Allen won both those tips easily. And the third thing is Kyrie Irving. I think that's the other problem with this team. I was hard on him last week. He did come back. He did play well. But I just don't know how he's going to deal with James Harden being there, being someone who plays virtually the same position as him going through the rest of the season. So there's a lot to think about with the Brooklyn Nets. Still time to turn things around. We're still early in the season, 55 games to go, but some issues that need to be addressed. And one last thing, they are really playing down to their competition, especially against teams that they should be beating. I mean, Cleveland, Charlotte, Memphis, these are teams where 4 of their 7 losses have come against, and they should be beating these teams pretty handily. Second topic of the discussion, I want to shift to the NFL. Of course, Tim and I made our predictions already. I said that it'll be Chiefs-Bucks making the Super Bowl. He went the total opposite route and went with the Packers and the Bills. I don't know how Tim's feeling about that pick now because they just cleared Patrick Mahomes from concussion protocol. He will be on the field Sunday competing for that championship, appearing in the AFC title game for the 3rd consecutive season. And Patrick Mahomes, after suffering that scary injury against Cleveland, he's going to be motivated to fuel this Chiefs team to a Super Bowl. And remember, the last time the Chiefs and Bills matched up earlier this season, the Chiefs trounced them, and they did not even need Patrick Mahomes in that game. It was the running game they had, specifically Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Damian Williams, who fueled them to that victory. So a lot to consider there. But the Kansas City Chiefs, I still think, are in good position heading into the conference championship game. And last topic before our interviews is baseball. There was an interesting trade, a 3-team deal that helped both the Padres and the Mets. The Padres continue to bolster that stacked rotation, which even without Mike Clevenger next season is going to be one of the best, if not the best, in the major leagues. They've now added Joe Musgrove, who's turned around his career these last couple of years in Pittsburgh after a lackluster start in Houston. Now you have him and Yu Darvish and Paddock and Lamet and Snell. That 5-man rotation is incredible. Plus, they still have some big-time pitching prospects down in AAA right now. So they're in a good position. The Mets also getting a nice win on this deal at a cheap price. They get Joey Lucchesi, who is a solid starter, can come out of the bullpen. And for the Mets, the start of the rotation is great with Jacob deGrom, Marcus Stroman, Carlos Carrasco, but then it starts getting iffy, and they don't really want to be in the realm where Steven Matz has to start games because they've gone down that road so many times over the last 6 years, and it hasn't gone too well. And as good as Seth Lugo is as a reliever, every time they use him as a starter, he has a couple good starts, and then he gets dismantled against a team that's usually not so good, like the Phillies or the Marlins, and it doesn't really work out. Then he goes back to the bullpen and he thrives. That's where Seth Lugo should be. So bringing in another potential starting pitcher, at least for these first few months when they don't have Syndergaard, as a Mets fan, I'd be very happy with an opening day rotation of deGrom, Stroman, Carrasco, David Peterson, and Joey Lucchesi. I think there's a very solid group that the Mets can bring out there, but I don't know how that poses against the Padres. And everybody's saying the National League this year is going to come down to 4 teams: San Diego, the Mets, the Braves, and the Dodgers. I think pitching-wise, the Padres might have the edge here. I know the Mets, I think, have the best overall pitcher in that whole group in Jacob deGrom, but from top to bottom, that 5-man rotation for San Diego is going to be lights out this year. Blake Snell, Yu Darvish, and Joe Musgrove all coming over in the offseason. Second time in the last 5 years, the Padres have gotten really aggressive during the offseason. And this time, I think it's going to pay off for A.J. Preller because he's not getting old guys on expiring contracts and for ridiculous prices. Some of these contracts might be a little ludicrous, but they're good decisions and they're good players coming in, and they still have their core in the farm system. So the San Diego Padres, people always, in any sport, contemplate tanking, how fair it is, how smart it is. I'm not going to say necessarily that San Diego tanked, but this team has not been good in about 10 years. And now it's all coming to fruition with Fernando Tatis Jr. having the money to bring in people like Eric Hosmer and now all these starting pitchers. The Padres are a deep team. They do not have many holes at all and might be one of the teams most ready to capture a World Series title in 2021, especially since the Dodgers won it last year. And we know historically in recent years, after you win the World Series, you tend to have a lapse and not be nearly as competitive the following season. 2015, the 2016 Royals, the 2020 Nationals, just to name a couple. That's really something to consider here. The Los Angeles Dodgers, I'm not saying they're not a talented team, but we don't know how strong they are going to be going forwards because they did get that World Series title. After all those years, all those tough losses in the World Series to teams that were cheating, to teams that were, considered to be worse than them. But now the Los Angeles Dodgers finally got that title, and now the Padres are going to be the ones who are going to be on the attack in the National League West. But like I said on the last show, Padres and Dodgers and then Mets and Braves, those are the 4 teams. And you want to win your division. You do not want to be in a 1-game playoff because all 4 of those teams have really good rotations. So that's going to wrap up our sports talk. Let's move into our interviews now to preview the Daytona 250. So let's get started with our interviews to preview the upcoming Daytona 250, which will be live on Twitch at 8 o'clock Saturday night, the beginning of the Virtual Racing Championship season, 6th running of the event. And to start off our interviews, we're going to be joined by one of the rookies in the race, driving for Hoffman Family Racing, Ben Smith. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Eddie. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right, so you're entering as a rookie. You didn't even race in VNS, making the jump right up to the VRC. What do you think is going to be the biggest adjustment heading into this season?
The biggest adjustment, I think, for me is going to be the cars that we race, jumping up from trucks and racing Xfinity cars and the Enduros, jumping straight into the Cup cars. It's going to be that. It's the kind of officiating we have. I'm more used to being in a voice chat, and the official will just call something out. So hopefully, Joshua Franks, my crew chief, can help me out a lot on that. I think those are 2 of the big ones that I think of right off the top of my head.
So other question, we know about Ford and how well they work together as a team. How are you willing to get into that team mindset with how well Ford worked together at the plate tracks to try to get a victory in the Daytona 250?
I mean, I'm all for working together with all the Fords. Over the off season, Ford has put in a lot of work towards the season overall, doing test sessions at different tracks. Um, I got to work with Ford, but at the end of the day, also, if it's on the last lap, I've got to race for myself. So one of the main objectives is 100% to get Ford up to the front to get another 250 win. But if I'm battling with a Ford on the last lap to win the Daytona 250, it is what it is.
100%. All right, Ben Smith, best of luck in the Daytona 250.
Thank you, Eddie. Appreciate you having me on here.
Next interview, we are joined by the newest driver. Moving over to Miscraft Motorsports is Ryan Miniker. Ryan, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so the big question everybody has, you had a good season last year with Thunderbolt Racing. You won a playoff race at Talladega, made the postseason. Why the move to Miscraft Motorsports?
I feel it's a better fit. I really, since Paul's moving down to VNS and Thomas is leaving, I'm not going to have the same teammates that I had last year. But I know Tyler. I know the owner Tyler really well. We've built a good bond, and I feel like it's to make because the team is stuck in Toyota. We're not stuck, but placed in Toyota, and I know the cars really well, and I.
All right, so just a quick question here. I mean, out of all the drivers, it seemed like that weren't with Ford last year, you tended to have the most success at the plate tracks. How are you guys going to work together as Toyotas and maybe even work with the Chevys to try to overtake the Fords in the VRC plate races this season, including the 250?
Well, maybe like with Team Drew, we can be the same because last year we worked with Thunderbolt worked with Team Drew, so we know the guys over there, Drew and Jarrett Talmadge. But we also worked with Tyler at some points during the plate race in the fall at Dega. So I think it's just gonna be a lot of the same. We should have the same speed, and maybe instead of that one win, we can go and get 2 or 3.
All right, Ryan Miniker, best of luck in the 250.
Thank you.
Next up here, we are joined by Joshua Franks, who this season is racing full-time in the VNS, but he won the Clash, and now he's ready to try to do more in the Daytona 250. Franks, you're racing for Miscraft Motorsports in VNS, but you're racing for Hoffman Family Racing here in VRC. Why do you still have this commitment to Ford, and how are you continuing to build the team? Ben Smith alluded to you being his crew chief in VNS. How are you helping build Ford to help them continue their success in the VRC and plate races this season?
We've ran a lot of test sessions in preseason to try to build that. I helped out with strategy a lot last year when we were able to show that success at the plate tracks last year, and we're looking to carry that over. Hoffman Family Racing specifically aligned with McGinnis and the rest of the Ford affiliate guys that have been practicing for the 250 and VNS races. We've shown great strides in those practice sessions. Despite sometimes we've fallen off in qualifying, but we've shown that we can get to the field and we can get to the field quick and try to hold our position through strategy and other things that could possibly lead us to a win.
So you raced in the Clash and you got that win. Of course, the Clash, there was some drama with the fuel saving and not a lot of side-by-side racing, but what did you learn from that race that can help you heading into this Daytona 250?
Into the 250, I was able to learn a lot about fuel strategy. It carries over a lot differently. There wasn't really an easier way to save in the previous game that we were on, and now coming here into Heat 5 and being able to learn a lot about what you can do in the draft, especially with the different styles of draft being normal and possibly, I think, highs being rumored as what we're running in and such. But the ability to be able to mess around with these different type of draft packages and such, and be able to experiment the type of moves that you can make. We saw 3x3 racing in the VNS practice, and I could imagine that'd be the same for Cup. So the aggression level for a lot of guys is probably going to get turned up to 11, and that's when I'm usually at my best, is whenever I can make aggressive moves and either aggressively save and conserve as far as fuel and tires, or try to make moves, and that's what was able to win me the Clash and hopefully set me up well for the 250 later on today.
All right, well, you've certainly had success in plate races in the VRC before. Only guy to finish in the top 5 in all 4 VRC plate races last season. Joshua Franks, best of luck heading into the Great American Virtual Race.
Thank you.
Next, we're joined by someone who's had arguably the most success in the VRC before, a former Daytona 250 winner, Tyler MacDonald, who's racing part-time this season, but is on the pole for the Daytona 250. Tyler, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
So it's going to be a different year. You're not going for the championship. So I feel like being conservative, if you ever were conservative in the 250 simply to get points, that's completely out the door here. How does your strategy change now that you're not racing for points and just racing for the win in the 250?
To be honest with you, it's going to be probably about the same. Mainly because of track position. You're going to want to be at the front and halfway and have the ability to play with the tools at hand to find your way in a pit road at the front of the fields, or just have more time compared to other drivers. So track position is still going to be as key as it was before. I really don't think it's going to change much, because even last season, or I guess the last 4 seasons or so, I was still going for the win in the 250, because early in the season, points application is not going to be too crazy at that time. So it'll be about the same, to be honest with you.
So last season, you worked predominantly with Team Drew, with Drew Jua and Jarrett Talmadge at the plate tracks, but now there are 3 more Toyotas in the field. How does your plans change heading into this season?
Basically, just a bigger clan. We're going to be trying to counter out those Fords that were taking over the restrict plates last season, especially at Talladega. But we got Ryan Miniker, who won the second Talladega and was able to beat them. So hopefully everything will go a little bit better with a new draft setting that we're going to have. Be a lot easier to get runs, and we should be able to work together pretty well, considering we will. 3 of us are on the same team now and can easily communicate. Team Drew, of course, we have a really good alliance with them. We did really well with them in the Clash and past races last season. So hopefully we can work something out, even though we won't be in contact with each other like we were last season. So it should work out pretty well.
All right, Tyler MacDonald, best of luck in the Daytona 250.
Thank you.
Next, we'll be joined now by the defending VNS champion, who's starting on the outside of the front row for the Daytona 250, Ike Shelley. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right, so first question, moving up directly from the VNS to the VRC, this is only your second career VRC start in the 250. What is the biggest adjustment you see moving up to this top series?
I think competition, really. There's a lot of competition that's going to be in VRC next season. Tim, Drew, Tyler running part-time, Ben, Michael Barron, just a lot of really fast drivers who just want to go for it. And I'm really excited for tomorrow and just rest of the season, really.
So I asked the same question to Joshua Franks. You raced in the Clash, you were in the mix, almost got the win, got on the outside, and just a lot of wrecking in the back. But what did you learn most from those 26 laps? I know the 26 laps weren't great with a lot of single file racing and fuel saving, but what did you learn that can help you for the 250?
Just if it does come down to the end of the race, if it does come down to fuel saving, just being able to save that much fuel, for when it's needed. And just it's a lot faster than VNS. It's a lot more faster paced. It's a lot more exciting, and there's a lot more people in a pack than there was last season. So I'm excited for tomorrow, and hopefully we can go out and win.
All right, Ike Shelley starting second. Best of luck in the race.
Thank you. Have a good day.
So finally here we are talking to the defending VRC champion who's hoping to get his first Daytona 250 win, Drew Jua. Thanks for joining us.
What's up, Eddie?
So last season, you can blame it on the Fords, you can blame it on the lag, but the plate tracks, they weren't really your thing. You were so good at all the other races, but just bad luck in all 4 of those races. How can you try to curb that? You had a decent run going at the beginning of the Clash, but how can you try to make this Daytona 250 win a reality this season?
I'm going to try and work together with my teammates and my Chevy teammates better this season. We didn't ever really get hooked up and fight with the Fords. The Fords were very strong in the sense that they could easily get combined, because I feel like they outnumbered us at the plate tracks, even if we had the same number of cars.
So just big picture stuff. focusing away from the Daytona 250 on the season itself, you're looking to become a two-time champion. What do you think will be the most difficult obstacle to repeating as a champion?
I feel like the new playoff format will definitely be difficult, as instead of points throughout the season, it's going to reset at the start of the playoffs. I feel like I had a huge buffer going into the playoffs, which gave me a decent cushion to where it was just me and Tyler. And now it's going to be 6 other people, 7 other people.
Mm-hmm. So Drew Jua looking to defend himself as the VRC champion back in the number 1 Chevrolet. Best of luck in the 250 and this
Thanks,
season.
Eddie.
And that'll just about wrap up today's episode of Sports Speak. A thank you to all the drivers from the VRC who joined us to preview tomorrow's Daytona 250. It's going to be Saturday night, 8 o'clock on Twitch. We will have a link here in the description to the broadcast. I'll actually be there calling the race, and Tim is actually one of the people in the race, so best of luck to him. Tim will also be back on Sports Speak next week. We're going to try to get Raheel Jazzball on here as well. We're going to have a lot to talk about on that show with the conference championships. We'll be recapping. Hopefully my picks are right. It doesn't really matter because I already won the championship for the picks anyway, but we both picked differently, like I said, so it's going to be interesting to discuss. We'll also rehash this discussion about the Brooklyn Nets, and we'll see how the scary hours are working now in addition to any other NBA news. And MLB free agency is really picking up. A lot has been going down the last couple days, so we'll update you on all the latest as spring training. It's exciting for all baseball fans. It's just under 3 weeks away. So that'll wrap things up. I'm Eddie Kalegi. We'll see you next time. Have a great weekend. This is Sports Speak.